Stop, stop. Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. We're going to start our discussion about exploring the mind of the artist. Today we have Marawah and Khalid Zahid, both of them contemporary artists from Saudi Arabia. Their work is also showcased today in the gallery. We wanted to talk about and explore the two pieces that they are showing here today, because both of them have a very interesting story, but also talk about why they started doing artwork, what got them inspired to be artists, because both of them have like very interesting different stories. We're gonna start with Marawah. Marawah's from Riyadh, and she's a photographer and a contemporary artist, and now she's doing film as well. We're gonna start with the work that's outside, but two different pieces that we actually don't see. You want to talk a little bit about this, the process and the work itself?
First of all, thank you so much for having us all here. Yeah, the project name is Ruh, which means soul in Arabic. For this project, I decided not to use a camera. So I was searching for a different medium to navigate more and probably like go deeper into my subject. I've been always triggered to the notion of the unseen, what we can't see in our eyes, but we can visualize always in our mind. For this project, I used the scanning electron microscope. Ruh is revolved around the Saudi man's attire from the culture part, but like I was trying to create a universal language by kind of spotlighting or like focusing on our possessions, our belongings that we own, and how much we can sort of be part of it. And I was trying to characterize it and adding more human element into these possessions by kind of doing a resemblance between the human cells, human body cells, and these kind of fibers or fabric. Each piece is 2 millimeter by 2 millimeter coated with gold in 5 minutes, and then it was inserted inside this scanning electron microscope, which was reading the electrons coming from the gold, and it was lightening the whole these areas. Each piece had a different story. There were 4 pieces. We can see here the previous one was a shamagh. It was 67 years old, and this one, the next one was the thobe. It was 30 years old. I was trying to make it more personal by adding the story of each piece, as well as naming it by its owner, not as shamagh or ragal. Like the name of this piece is Saleh, which belongs to my friend's late father, who owned this thobe basically, and she kept it after he died. And she doesn't have brothers, and she doesn't have. She's not married, so it kind of resembles. It's like a signifier of masculinity in her life as a female. Sorry. The next one was Shamagh, 67 years old. It was owned by Sheikh Abu Hamad, who was at that time 100 years old. It has a noble story. It was a gift from Princess Johara bint Abdurrahman, the sister of King Abdulaziz, where basically she gave it as a gift for him because she asked him to pray a Taraweeh and be the imam of the prayer. And that was basically the gift. You can see even the pattern. It's torn because it's very, very old. But even the pattern at that time, it was completely different from the current one right now.
I also wanted you to touch on the topic of changing possession from the designer or the maker.
Yes, the thing is, like, whatever we own, it's kind of not doesn't belong to the creator or the designer anymore. It belongs to us. I was trying to focus on the fact that our possessions, it has our energy, our vibes, our even sweat and memory. Even when people depart life, basically their possessions is always a signifier of their existence. It's kind of manifests their presence in life.
And we have 2 videos of the microscope. If you can explain a little bit about what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, this is 3 strings of al-agal. Al-agal, which is the piece, it's showcased in the exhibition. Basically, the magnification, it was around maybe 200. I think it was the middle string, if I'm not mistaken. Al-agal was owned by my brother, and he wore it during my uncle's funeral. So I was trying also to highlight and personalize the object to the story as well. The beauty of the scanning electron microscope, you can see like the magnification goes really deep, and give us again what I sort of call the metaphoric cells, resembles the human cell. And also, as the piece was showing, there was like crystal dust in the agal. This is the bisht. It's my dad's bisht, and he was like generous enough to let me basically cut a 2 millimeter by 2 millimeter of this bisht, and it was like that was the end of that bisht forever. He wore it during my eldest sister and for one of his first children to get married. So it has a different story, as well as also completing the whole Saudi men's attire.
These are the 4 pieces that we
These
have
are the 4
from
pieces.
those 2.
Yeah.
These last 2 videos are showing outside, and the other 2 are not. And now we're going to introduce Khalid. Khalid Zahid's piece is the giant petrol pump that's hanging from the roof. This is it, some of the installation of the work previously. It's called Beginning End. If you want to talk a little bit about it as well.
Nice pictures. Basically, I got a gas pump, deconstructed it completely. It's an old one, it's not a new one. I did that on purpose. Here we're talking about petroleum in Saudi Arabia, basically. So I picked the old one to basically shed the light on how it started, how it all started, basically. So it's basically the deconstruction of the oil era and entering into a new era. So going with the 2030 vision of the king, and so what I did here basically, I deconstructed it. It's going farther and farther away. So what the kingdom is doing basically is going farther and farther away from
Dependence, yeah.
Yeah, from the oil, and looking for other sources to depend on basically in the future. The mechanism was working as well. So it shows how much time we have left and how much money will be spent from now to 2030, basically. That's basically what it is in a nutshell, in a way.
It's really interesting because that's what all this trip is talking about when we come to the diplomatic, political side of it, is like how we can diversify our economy, and to take that concept and to make it into an artistic component is really interesting to see. I wanted to ask you about the funny, quirky parts of it. Like, a lot of people keep asking me about why the spelling mistake of premium, and then like اذكر Allah, about that, if you want to talk a little bit.
اذكر Allah, I put that on purpose. Basically, if you're familiar with Saudi and you're familiar with, you can call it street art, Islamic street art in a way. In any old gas station, you find a Islamic quote. Somebody puts that on a gas pump. اذكر Allah, la ilaha illallah, something like that. So it's part of the, I think, how can I say this? The historical piece, basically. So it's part of it. And the premium, I think that was a spelling mistake. No. No.
Because it is an actual petrol pump.
Anyway, it is an actual petrol pump.
Just
No.
away.
Yeah, I bought it actually. It wasn't thrown away.
Okay.
I went and made a deal with the gas guy. I'm like, listen, you know what? I'm taking this. How much? I bought it from him.
That's
So
amazing.
yeah.
This is the first installation work that you do, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Before
As big as this one.
your work is mostly photography.
Yes.
Other kinds of like sculptural work, and you did a little bit of street art as well.
Yes.
And
Don't tell anyone.
it's always talking about changing of culture in Saudi Arabia and how we look at each other. So a lot of people really like this work, and I just want to say we're really happy that it's part. Both of you are really.
I'm happy. Most of my work is Saudi based, or the subjects are from Saudi. I think Saudi has a lot of rich subjects that we can use, especially as Saudi artists. This is the way I'm going, and that's why. And this is usually I focus on the need of the hour, and this was the need of the hour until now. It is so, and petroleum is getting higher. Prices are getting higher, so. It's good to focus on something and let people know what's going on, where Saudi heading in a positive way.
As well.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's nice to see something in the States, in Europe, that represents Saudi. So this is it.
Yes. It's really interesting to have both of your works because they're kind of like one is zooming in, and it's kind of deconstructing in the very close piece, and yours is taking something and making it larger, and taking it apart. So, I don't know, I think that dialogue is really interesting.
You want to do a piece together?
If we can have the slide with the names. I also wanted to ask both of you, maybe Marawah can start first. How did you start like your contemporary art? I know you started in photography. What pushed you to go into more artistic side?
I think my constant exploring into the meaning that what pushed me the most. Because I started in commercial photography, and at that time it was like it was kind of commercially oriented, the whole atmosphere. I felt for a while that something is missing, and I need another layer. For that, I did my MA in photojournalism in UK, and which was, I would possibly say, it was a quantum leap. Because it has a lot to do in like writing a photo story or a photo essay, and also establishing a communication with the subject matter on a very, very personal level, as well as taking a full responsibility of conveying the story of the subject matter. It was very interesting because like I used to have people come and approach me to take their photograph, and in photojournalism or documentary photography it's the other way around, where you basically knock people's door and introduce yourself and ask them for like personal stories and gain their trust, because it's very, very crucial, if I would say, and it's always debatable. Like there's this part of photojournalism where they call it a cold-blooded photography, especially during war photography, where the subject matter sometimes, where the sort of photojournalists take full advantage sometimes of the subject matter, like whether he's dying or needs some help. There've been always a debate about that. But the course that I took another shift. It was very much into the art, into the communication and psychological level of the subject matter. And then towards that, I kind of, as I said, gravitated towards how can we make the visible invisible, or the invisible visible as well, or making the familiar unfamiliar. I ended up doing my major project in Saudi, and I was challenging myself in a very, very private zone, and having my large gear in a very intimate private spaces, tackling the subject of mental health. And then through that, I discovered that there is this voice, that you cannot mute through the time. I was gravitated towards art in general. And I've been exploring different mediums through like photography, sculpture, and video, and now basically film. I've been criticized by jumping from one pool to another, but I believe like that's the beauty of art. You can do whatever you want to do.
And we're still like in a pretty early stage of artistic careers. So
Yes,
I think it's
exactly.
okay for us to explore a little bit
Absolutely.
with mediums
Absolutely.
until you find something that you're comfortable with.
Yes, absolutely.
I
It's
think,
a matter of how do you feel towards it.
The same goes for you. You've been exploring a lot with mediums.
Yeah.
If you want to start, I find your journey really interesting as well, because I know you come from a very serious business background, and I find that art was kind of your outlet away from your family business. So that's why I was interested in your artwork when I first met you in 2011. Can you talk a little bit about your journey as well?
All right. Started pop art with you, basically,
Right.
and loud art. And then you pushed me to changing my art, basically. Thank
It's
you.
not a question about me.
No, I think an artist today should be not only visual. He should have a very strong concept of what he's doing. The consumer today is very smart. They come, they see, if it's very strong visually and it doesn't have a concept or a deep meaning, they will neglect your art. And if it's very strong conceptually and it doesn't have visual strength in it, again. So you have to be very smart, very creative in what you do in order to reach, especially I think in Saudi today, because in my opinion, there is no education, strong education about art. We don't have museums. We don't have all these beautiful
yet.
things. Not yet. Hopefully one day.
Soon.
Ayo, inshallah. So the average consumer is not really educated. So he comes in to really see what's going on and to get educated and to leave happy.
To learn.
Yeah, exactly. So today that's what I'm trying to do. To basically show you a piece of you, a piece of Saudi, a piece of your neighborhood, a piece of your problem, positivity. So when you come in and leave, you leave with a positive note and then think, yes, I want to come back. I want to see another exhibition. So that's where I shifted from just doing regular pop art and changed into doing really deep and interesting subjects that touch Saudi. And like I said, Saudi is a treasure. It's full of subjects that young Saudi artists can use, like me. So that's my take on that, basically.
That's really great. Both of you have really interesting journeys. I wanted to open the floor for questions now. Go ahead.
Inshallah, Mu'an.
Yeah, cool. I think it's interesting now, and it's cool that you both, maybe just in that work specifically, it does touch upon culture and Saudi with you, the outfits, and Khalid. But I feel like it's very interesting right now. Us artists in Saudi have a bigger role than what we're used to having when it comes to the changes in country. We have a very interesting role in how we can represent the country abroad with the changes happening. But I'm questioning, I feel like this is a question that we all should have, is what is Saudi art? Is there such thing as Saudi art, or is it just art that's self-expression, or it comes from conflict and identity and stuff like that, complexities, and it just so happens that we're in Saudi? Do you feel the pressure of like being a Saudi artist rather than just an artist that speaks about the environment around them?
Yeah, I mean, to me, like, I'm not into the fact that to nationalize any kind of field, because, like, I mean, in the art community in general, like, it's simply individuals expressing themselves, no matter like what. I mean, I think mostly it has a lot to do with their own personal experience. I always keep saying that my culture is like the house that I grew up in. I cannot like expect that I would like grow in different part in Saudi Arabia at the same time. So I do represent myself as a human, as an individual. I mean the movement, because it's kind of very you know that's the case in Saudi Arabia, because like still it's been discovered. I'm glad that now we have the chance to speak on our behalf, whether in the art or any other field, and express ourselves again personally and individually, rather just like speaking on a full kind of nation. That's my take on it. I don't know.
I guess it just so happens that you're Saudi.
I think today there is, and to me, there is something called cultural art, and there's something called country art. So where your background comes from. So some people talk about their personal issues, and some people represent their country in a way or another, positive or negative. So today, us being here in the States or us being in Europe again, some of the artists represent Saudi because they show a glimpse of Saudi or like a small piece of it. So I think as for me, as a Saudi, I would like to show subjects that people don't know about. Today, as a regular artist, I would show art like any other artist, but I would be in the same boat, or they'll be better than me because they started a long time ago. But for me, when I show something from my culture, from Saudi itself, it gives me the edge because I'm showing people stuff that they never saw before, especially foreigners. And some people in Saudi, they don't know some subjects that we have. There are a lot of subjects that I can cover, and I can tell you a lot of people don't know about. So I think it's nice to cover that, and you can call yourself a Saudi artist, and you can call yourself that this is Saudi art, basically. And being like Marwa said, it's something new to the market. So people are exploring it, they're getting wowed by it, because something, we never had very strong, or there were very strong Saudi artists, but today the emerging young market is very strong, and they come up with very edgy and very risky art. And this is what the market wants to see. Positive, risky, strong. And that's what we're bringing to the table, I guess.
I think what differentiate also the circumstances of Saudi artists is like the way they develop. Most of them are self-taught. I mean, we don't have the museum culture. Even it will start very soon, but the younger generation are being now so lucky with all this openness and complete support. But going back to where we started, struggle is always good, and challenge is always good. Otherwise, it's going to be very boring. But the thing is, I think it's the challenge of the education part, the exploring part, the interaction, the culture interaction part. Because I truly believe that the culture of the museum it's a completely different scale in terms of interacting with an artwork, and it helps a lot to develop different skills in the artist, like designing the space, or just be aware or self-aware with the space surrounding it.
Thank you. Hanof wants to ask a question behind you. Right here.
Behind you.
Yeah.
Hi, sorry. So I just wanted to ask a question, but I have like an intro to
Yes,
your
of course,
artworks
this is
first.
discussion.
Okay, so basically what I've realized in both your artworks is that in the Arab world in general, there's a struggle with identity. There's always been a struggle with identity because there is always an intertwine between religion and identity, and some deviate from either or, okay? When it comes to Saudi art, it's very difficult to detach yourself from religion and identity, okay? But in today's world, what you have done is identity formation in a transnational world, okay? You use the method of dismantling, okay, a material object that actually depicts your identity, but you've displayed it in a method, and you've created a message behind it, okay? For example, in your artwork, the male, the patriarch of the family, the brother, he holds a certain role in every Saudi household, okay? And Khalid's artwork it used to be the source of our economy, okay? But today, our struggle is that we are modern traditionalists. The medium that we use in expressing ourselves is innovation, it's art, it's culture, it's dialogue, it's discourse. But it's a huge spectrum. So you're traditional and you're modern. And I feel this is the struggle in between. And both of you were talking about the artistic movement. So where do you feel on the spectrum that we are heading to? Where do you feel? Do you think we're going up, down, or horizontally? So that's my question.
All right. I think we're going up. I think the way we're going, we're going up because a lot of, as you see, a lot of the new, the younger generation is coming up with very strong subjects. Again, the pieces you see outside, the pieces are, again, very strong. They're very deep. It's not like it used to be. It's just, again, going back to what I said, it's only visual. It's not visual anymore. And it's not only conceptual anymore. It's both. And the subjects that are coming in are very strong. And you can see that in the eyes of the viewer when they come to the exhibition and they ask you questions. And as soon as they come and see the piece, their eyes light up, basically. Because they're like, wow, what is this? where did you come from, basically? So yes, I think we are going up and hopefully fly.
Yeah, I agree the same thing. Like, I completely, believe that, the evolution of art in our community is going really, developing so fast. We cannot undermine or underestimate these gadgets we hold. And, for the younger artists, where, like, they're exposed on a 24/7 with just their phone and, comparing and reading into work. During my solo show back in 2015, I was very much inspired by the younger generation coming and reading into the work. What I wish for is much more like focusing on the local part of it rather than international. Because since again, going back, we don't have the much sources of as art libraries or museums, the younger generation is very thirsty to this visual experience and very immersive experiences as well. Experiences like the Saudi Art Council, what they're doing on an annual level, annually, it encourages a lot. And you can see how much the excitement in the younger generation, like we're talking about, the age of 10 or 7 or 6, being explored. And then sometimes I feel jealous of them.
I always feel jealous.
Yeah. Because, during these educational program, they go through this, very abstracted, conceptual art. And I really just want to, even have a conversation with them. How do they perceive that? Because it's completely abstract. And some of them are, very, as well, deep, and some of them are very dark. So it has, it's been always like there's an open dialogue between the artwork and then the viewer and giving them the space. So from a kid's perspective, that would be really, really interesting. So I believe if we focus more on the locality, we're going to go even higher, I'm sure.
Thank you.
I have a question for Marawah. How did the documentary photography change who you are? And did it get you out of the bubble, or if you were in a bubble, did it get you out? And how did you explore? So did you explore it in Saudi culture or in other cultures?
Very interesting question. It made me more kind of courageous towards holding my camera. I studied in London, so it was not my hometown. And most of my subject matter were strangers to me, so I came to know them through my camera. But before that, there was always the high level of communication and trust between me and my subject matter. So we keep talking until they get comfortable with me and this very large gear to basically take photos. And they're and even the stories, the first stories was about European or UK women converting to Islam and how they're having a duality in their life. One of them was an opera singer, and she teaches basically classic music, and then she goes out of hijab, and then with hijab, and then how this kind of duality. And then transiting to the Libyan story, I did a full story about the Libyan revolution, because luckily when I arrived in London, it was the fall of Gaddafi. So we can imagine all the transitional, it was a transitional era. So it was for me to discover the Libyan, a nation that all what I know about was Gaddafi, no one else. I discovered the intellectual, the musicians, the writers, the artists, the people who basically started the revolution from their basically Facebook accounts. So it was not more about the photography part of it. It's much more the journey that I kept exploring. And as Susan Sontag said, the camera is a passport. And trust me, and each journey, I don't know where I'm going to end up. I was in the water with Raham Harrag, and then I end up in my last project in Safar, doing Safar exhibition in the middle of the desert with 35 people. So it's art, it's the camera, it's photography, it's everything. But again, I think it's you and the way you perceive it.
But it did help you get out of your bubble.
Oh yeah. But bubbles keep coming from time to time.
Do we have any more questions? Oh, great. Amazing. So many questions.
So it's great to have you both here, and it's great to know that This is state-backed. You know, for as long as I can remember, for as long as I have lived, art in general was looked at in a very, 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 very negative notion. It was banned for a lot of people by the state and by state agencies. So it's great to see all of you here talking freely about art. But my question is, and maybe more towards Marwa, but to both of you, photography for the longest time has been banned, and to me at least, photography for the longest time has been banned in Saudi Arabia. And to me, at least, photography is a great way for documenting. And it seems like we've lost a huge part of history by doing that. Is there any way now, with this revolution, to go back retrospectively and try to find that lost part of history and document it again, or is it just gone and forgotten?
Well, I mean, there is always this wish and urge to archive not only photography, film, art. I mean, we need to know more like about Saudi art history in general. But that's a very interesting question. I mean, I think it should be a collaborative effort from all these rising entities in art and highly, highly developed to basically go and go back into time and try to get as much as possible archival. It's not for us now, it's for the coming generation. And history should be, I mean, start to be like written, I mean, ages ago. We believe have a gap in architecture, in art, in film. I mean, since the cinema is like now approaching, Ali al-Kathami once threw a question in Twitter about Bakr al-Shiddi, is there any kind of like archival for his work in the beginning of Muhammad al-Ali? And then that goes as well to photography and art. I think we should also be self-aware and to raise the awareness about that because it's very important. We cannot just take off out of, so-called self-platform or whatever. History is a primer platform for us to take off to the next level. If we're not rooted, if we don't have the right references for our own culture, and that's a very interesting question. Like when I did my project, I went to image libraries in terms of Saudi Arabia, in terms of mental health, for instance. There was nothing, and I'm sure I was just checking. Image libraries is one of the very much important things that should start to be developed. Throughout the current entities, and should be really, studied very well. Archival is very, very important. Otherwise, as you said, we're going to lose it if we don't start right now.
I know there are, just to add, I know there are some efforts to collect at least images from, personal images from people that have discarded them and such. I know someone who is going to Haraj and different areas and seeing thrown images and scanning them and making it. I don't know what's happened to that project, but I know it's happening. But it's definitely, if it's not going to come from a state-backed level, it's definitely something that in this area, in this room, in this gallery, if you gather enough people, and you want to start that project, then I feel like this is the place for you to find the people to support you and help you to do that. Thank you, everybody, for having this lovely conversation with us. And thank you, Marawah and Khalid, for your insights.
Thank you.